Hey everyone, welcome back to Wonderland Wednesday. This week we're going to be talking about the 1949 version of Alice in Wonderland. This one actually has kind of an interesting history because it was filmed twice. One was in English, the other one was in French. It was fun to watch both of them. I enjoyed watching the different versions. They had two different editing teams and two different directors working on the film, so there are noticeable differences.
Definitely.
Besides the language. This is around the same time that Walt Disney was coming up with his own, and he did everything that he could to keep this film from being released in the US. It did eventually get a release, but it was not very wide, and he kind of obstructed the process for a lot of the film. The most notable thing was the fact that there's more than one color process available back then, and he made sure that they were not able to get the best one. As a result, the color is kind of decaying a lot faster.
This is probably a compliment to this film because if it had been released, it would have given it a run for its money. It was pretty good.
The movie opens with a fictional account of Lewis Carroll giving the story to Alice and her sisters. In this version, they're a lot older and they're living at Oxford, I believe. They're kind of going back to the theory that all the characters in Alice in Wonderland are based on real people. The Queen of Hearts is the Queen of England at the time,
Victoria.
and everybody at Oxford had different roles in Wonderland as well.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was in the animated part of the film, the king has a German accent and Queen Victoria married a German. So I thought it was interesting they took it to that level and put that little detail in there.
The main thrust of the story is that the Queen is coming to Oxford and people are getting ready to see her, but they don't want the kids in quotes.
I think they chose adults and cast them as children or teenagers. You just have to go with it.
They're shut away in their rooms basically, but Charles Liddell, Lewis Carroll, takes them out on a boat ride and tells them the story of Alice.
And he's telling how she's on the bank and getting sleepy, and then this claymation rabbit comes along. Not the cutest rabbit I've ever seen, but it was fine.
We've seen much worse, so this one didn't bother us.
He wasn't disturbing.
Yeah, he was just a little odd looking, like most of the characters.
That was one of our complaints, where they had Alice as a live person in Wonderland, and then they had all of these claymation animals and people, but they made the people really unattractive, and I would have preferred to have all live people and just have claymation creatures. Either that, have the people be better looking, but we still liked the film.
Yes, that's one way you can tell that how good it was, because even though the characters were ugly, we still enjoyed it. Unlike some of the others where the characters were ugly, we didn't like the film because it wasn't that great. The film itself was great.
If you like this era in film, you'll enjoy some of the visual aspects of it, because late 40s you start to get a 50s vibe for the styling of objects, the color choices. I don't know exactly how to express it, but while they have her in a very 1860s vibe outfit, they're being abstract, but it's with a modern for the time twist.
So when the rabbit goes by, she eventually falls down the rabbit hole, and we really liked this scene because they used dialogue from the book.
They did a great job. It wasn't a fast fall. You have her little British accent. They put good detailing in it. And the scene with the doors was kind of interesting because they have all of these doors, and then the doors start to disappear, and she's running to get to the last door, and it becomes tiny. So they had fun visually with that one.
And it looked well done too.
And it wasn't creepy, it was just creative.
We should also mention too, this scene differed from the French version in that there was an added scene in the English version. In the French version, she looks through the door and she sees the rabbit setting up for the croquet game / party in the garden. But in the English version, they took a scene from the end of the movie where the cards are painting the roses red. This is supposed to come at the end of the story, but they've moved it to the beginning with Alice looking out and seeing the rabbit getting after the cards for painting the roses red, and then there's a whole musical number.
Which makes more sense where towards the end, which they
Yeah.
did right in the French version.
Yes, it would have made a lot more sense to have it at the end. I'm not really sure why they moved it to this scene, but that
It
was
was
one
strange.
of the big differences between the English and French versions.
We really did like the song though, because it ties in with the whole political
Mm-hmm.
butter up type thing. This rabbit basically is a yes man and a trickster,
Mm-hmm.
willing to do what it takes to advance himself. So there's humor in the song. It's good viewing as an adult because you're going to pick up
Yes.
on the humor they were trying to portray.
Yeah, this
there.
was a great scene. They actually had a good shrinking and growing scene
Yes.
for this film, unlike some of the past ones.
It took a little while, but they did it right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really appreciated when she was drinking, she has this mental conversation going on with herself that sounds straight out of the book about all the things that it tastes like, kind of Wonka-esque. When the little water rat or mouse comes along, it was a little bit different in the French version. The song was different. They had them upside down at one point in the French version. The English song is really cute, and she's talking about basically how everything is going topsy-turvy in her day, but she's really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. The music in this movie is really great. I think we like pretty much all the songs.
Pretty much, yeah. The Duchess, I don't care about her song, but Alice's song was good. It's one that I could be driving along and enjoying it down the road, which I don't know where I could get it.
It would be fun if we could find a soundtrack for this movie because I would like to own it.
Sure.
Eventually, she and the mouse get out of the River of Tears, and this is the scene with the caucus race next, and I really liked it. This is another one that was different in the English versus the French. There was a few little differences.
There were a couple of things that were prominent to me. In the English version, you have like the Brady Bunch or the Hollywood Squares where you have all of these little faces in boxes. That's not in the French version. In the French version, they have sort of an odd carousel type scene where the animals are the the animals on the carousel. And since we're not fluent in French, I don't know what they were doing there, but that was different.
After the caucus race, there's a whole scene with the rabbit's house, which in this version they did really well. They finally have Bill for Sarah, because Sarah has really wanted a Bill.
They did pretty well with this one. It was humorous, it was cute. The rabbit was good in this scene. They had Bill actually go in the chimney like the book, and they had him, the rabbit, referencing her as Marianne. So they were pretty true to the book.
She eventually shrinks and escapes, and the house sort of crumples in on itself.
Which doesn't happen in the book, but it worked.
Yeah,
it was okay.
It was fine.
Early on in the movie, she gets accused by the rabbit of stealing the tarts. Like, it must be the stranger amongst them.
Even though he knows very well it's not her, because he ate one of the tarts himself.
And that was another thing tying into politics or whatever.
The rabbit is very devious in
yes,
this version.
He is. Because he basically lets the Knave of Hearts off, like, oh, the stranger stole these, munch munch.
Eventually, she ends up heading towards the Duchess's house, and this is probably another one of our most favorite scenes, our most favorite songs. Instead of one fish delivering the message to the Duchess, there's a whole army of fish. But they have this really great song about passing the blame to each other, and everybody has their own job.
It was just laugh out loud cute and humorous. You have this whole line of footmen, and right at the end is the little fish, which is basically the scapegoat for everything. And when they get to the Duchess's house to deliver the message goes all the way back down the fish to the little guy to deliver, and he's kind of clueless because they'll have him towards the end of a line going, eh. It was just a great song.
So after the message is delivered, Alice eventually gets into the house, and the Duchess is probably one of the uglier characters.
This is one of my least favorite scenes because it was not a good looking baby. This would have been so much better with live people. The Duchess had this weird, gross skin tone. I don't know if that was just from the aging of the film. The cook was alright. I think the cook was alright.
Except the pepper she was throwing around looked like blood splattering on the screen. It was very strange.
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't right. And the Duchess has this whole song about how she used to be in favor with the Queen, and they do have the song about the baby, and I don't like the way they animated it because I just thought she was too rough with the baby.
Yeah, she was really throwing the baby around. I mean, the baby's claymation, so it's not like they're abusing a real child.
But I just didn't like the flavor
yeah.
of the scene. And she ends up going off with the baby like she's supposed to. She feels like this baby's gonna be dead if I don't rescue him. The pig was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie because it looked like babe. It was so cute. Oh my goodness.
And my thing was, if they could use a live action pig for this scene, why couldn't they use live action people? It would have saved the money and time. I don't know. It's just one of my little nitpicks.
But the pig was adorable. And the Cheshire Cat was in this bit of the movie too.
He wasn't the greatest looking, but he was definitely not the worst Cheshire Cat ever.
He was kind of skinnier.
Yeah, he was rather scrawny.
And for some reason he looked kind of French to me. you
well,
know what
it was
I'm
a French
saying?
film,
like the
so
expression of his face.
After the Cheshire Cats, they end up at the Mad Tea Party. Mad Hatter was probably the best looking human.
Yeah, he looked alright. They made him a redhead. He actually looked good. The March Hare was okay.
Yeah, but only just okay.
And the Dormouse, I mean, he was okay, but he looked kind of rat-ish. Not the cutest Dormouse that we've ever seen.
Well, here they're interrupted. This is one of those places where that's a little different from English to French. The one that I'm thinking of right now is English. She ends up back at the Hall of Doors and talks to the Cheshire Cat. And in the English version, she's wondering how to get somewhere. And then there's some weird dialogue of her off screen saying, "Oh, I've gone to the bottom of the sea," or something like that. And then there's this whole long dance sequence with lobsters, which is obviously supposed to be part of the lobster quadrille scene, but they've moved it to this part for some inexplicable reason. I have no idea. You have that, and then you have a really awkward cut straight to the Queen arriving where the cards have been setting up for the party, whereas in the French version it was a more natural transition between the tea party and the song with the rabbit that we mentioned was at the beginning of the English film.
Yes.
It's a much more natural progression of events the way it happens in the French version. It's just really awkward cuts in the English version. I don't think that she actually played croquet in the French version. I think she was just watching.
And they
in
had
the English version she was actually playing.
Yeah, where they just had them clapping for the Queen in the French version. And then she gets doubly accused of stealing the tarts. And the Queen wants to behead her right away, but her husband wants there to be a trial. And she gets taken away to be imprisoned by the Griffin, which is strange.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why it happened that way.
I did not like the Griffin in this version because he seemed very delighted about her being imprisoned and beheaded. He was just a little bit of a sinister character and maybe slightly insane, I don't know. And I doubly did not like the mock turtle.
He looked like he was part sheep, part turtle, when he's supposed to be part cow, part turtle. And he looked really, really depressed.
And with these exaggerated lips and just weird.
Yeah. This scene is where the lobster quadrille scene was supposed to be, and it was in the French version.
Yes,
and I think they completely replaced the mock turtle, because I don't think he was in the French version
at all. He wasn't at all. Then you have the trial where she is the accused. One of the things that I really like in the book is where Bill is very confused and he doesn't have a pencil and he's trying to write with his fingernail. And you look down at the box of all the jurors and they all look like they're trying to write with their fingernails, and they didn't really explain it. So they didn't completely capture the cuteness. But they still did a pretty good job with this scene, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When things really start to go south, as if they weren't already going south, she does have the cards fly up at her, only in this version, they look like they just had real cards shooting up at her rather than any sort of animation. And she wakes up
On the boat.
On the boat where he had been telling the story, and she's pretty sure that this has really happened.
Mm-hmm.
The queen is leaving. You can see the procession going down the road, but they also have the rabbit.
Yeah, she still sees the white rabbit, leading you to believe that maybe it did happen.
Yeah, and they're all heading back home, and they just sort of leave it on a light, happy note. We would both recommend it. Like I say, it would have given the animated Disney film a run for its money. I could see it drawing away revenue. It was a genuine threat to Disney.
He had reason to be worried.
Yes, so it's, on the one hand, I do feel a little bit sorry for that guy, but thankfully we still have the film and we're able to enjoy it. I thought it was a really good angle. I'd probably been introduced to the idea of it replicating people of that time, but it actually makes the story make so much more sense, and I liked the way they portrayed his struggle with different things in his life without it being dark or anything. It was good. We recommend it, and if anybody knows where to get the songs, let us know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all for today's Wonderland Wednesday. We'll be back next week. We're reviewing the Japanese version. It's a very short half-hour episode of a fairy tale TV series.
It wasn't our favorite, but you'll get to hear all about it. And if you love Japanese stuff and you like the 70s, you might like it.
So we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.